right. So, Oregon Promise team, myself, Olivia, and Walter, if you ever need anything from us, we are all checking emails. We all communicate with students and administrators, FAAs. So let us know if you ever need help or have any questions from us. So this is a partner portal, mostly partner portal training. We're going to touch a little bit on reporting and the changes that are coming up with more details coming. So we know by looking at the portal, we've all used the portal before, I'm assuming, including you, Megan, that there's different ways in which you can find a student in the Oregon Promise portion of the partner portal. So one thing to mention is that all of these lists can be sorted and downloaded to be sorted. Excel heavy if you need it. Makes life much easier instead of just maybe going through the portal itself. But authorized awards, so 3 different kinds of lists that you can find in the portal under Oregon Promise, authorized awards. So basically that's a list of all of the awards, all of the authorized awards, everyone that has applied and has been authorized for your institution, which means that they put your institution's name on their FAFSA. Will come up on this list. It's up to date. As you know or may not know, we update our lists every Monday, and so every Monday there will be a new set of lists that come up. You may have new people on the list or not every week, and we're going to go over that in a little bit more detail. List history is a snapshot of time of the authorizations each Monday. So when we go through the list history page, you will see that you can select which Monday's list you want to look at. It provides a history of the students. So for example, from the first list that they were ever authorized to any changes, revokes, as we know, students make corrections to their FAFSA, that kind of resets the award. And so once we get a valid FAFSA again, the award is reissued if the student is continuously eligible. And then you have the individual list history. That is a list that only includes that specific student. There's different ways in which you can search through those lists. You will notice, which can be a little confusing, that sometimes you will look for a student under one list. You won't find the student, but you will find the student under another list. And so just kind of poke around and check. And I'll give you some tips moving forward, since I did that for quite a few years by myself at the institutions I worked at. So this is the page. When you open the partner portal, you select your college. Obviously, it's the only one that you have access to. And then you go on to the Oregon Promise link, and it gives you this page. So again, authorized awards, list history, individual list history. This is where the disbursement reporting happens. So you click on here and it'll tell you when the disbursement reporting is open for each of the terms. Student disbursement status, you can check the student and see if they were disbursed or not. You can also see how many credits that have been reported for that student for your own institution only. So anything that you see here, you will not see information for other institutions, just yourself, your own. And then the feature documentation has the waivers. The links for the waivers are currently not working. So if you do need a waiver form that you don't have saved, please make sure that you email me and I can send you those links. This will be corrected. We're just not there yet when it comes to our IT department working on this. All of the file layouts, disbursement file layouts are here, including the one for the upcoming academic year. Obviously upcoming, and we're kind of already on there, but the 24-25, as we know, there have been changes to Oregon Promise and how it's awarded in terms of award status and enrollment levels. We're going to go over that in a little bit, but all of the file layouts are already here, even though the reporting system is not ready yet to receive that information. I would recommend having your IT department look at the new file layout for 24-25 if you haven't had them do so yet, just to make sure that you are kind of preparing yourself for November when you have to start reporting and the changes that will come after that. One more thing on waivers. We tend to save these documents and then just quickly access them from our own computers. Make sure that the waiver form that you're using has the new governor's name. The old one, I keep receiving waivers with Kate Brown's name and signature on it. So we just want to make sure that you're using the correct form. This looks a little busy, but these are the 3 different kinds of ways that you can find students. So I mentioned the authorized awards. You can go by term, first, last name, either SSN, and then you can also look at the change status, which we'll talk about in a few because that's really important. The list history gives you a little bit more information, such as reject reason if the student is not listed or not awarded. And when you search the list history, you want to leave awarded and not awarded on here, just so that you're not missing out on any of the students that may come up on your list. And then the individual list history, you can use a person ID, which is the people ID, SSN, etc. I feel like that was the list I used the least when I worked through these lists, and probably the list history would be the one that I worked the most, and I worked those very religiously because you definitely don't want to miss a status change of any kind if, like I said, the student submits a FAFSA and then the ISER is rejected, but the week before the student was authorized. So you want to keep track of those changes because obviously you don't want to award the student if they're no longer eligible. So change status. So when I ran these lists, so every Monday at both my previous jobs, I was responsible for all of the state aid. And so this was the first thing I did in the morning on a Monday, since new lists come out on Mondays with very small exceptions if there's a system issue, but every Monday you can expect to see a new list. So what I would do every Monday is basically it's defaulting to the 24-25 academic year. So you just leave that there and you leave the list date for whatever date comes up because it's the latest list. And then I would leave it as awarded and not awarded. Do not assign a reject reason at all. And then click on changed, then search. Then a list will come up of all of the students that had a status change that were authorized on this list and a previous list, but the award amount is different. So the change would be anybody who was on this list and had an award in the past, but the award the award amount changed. Then I would click on first list and then search. And then again, obviously I had a really manual process, but that's basically what my process was for kind of catching and making sure that none of these students fell through the cracks. Then you go through first list, which is first listing for the given year for this individual student. Then you move on to new list. So you click on new and then search. New is authorized on this list, but is not on any previous list. So this is like a brand new student. The no change, meaning obviously it's same status as previous list, so there's been no change to the student. And then the revoked, which is really a very important one because, like I mentioned, a student can be originally eligible and then change status for some reason, right? So you definitely want to make sure that if the student is revoked, that you take that away from your awards so that the student is not getting paid. If the student becomes eligible again, they will come up on the following week's list or whenever they make the correction on their FAFSA. So you definitely want to make sure that you always check the revoked. And then for those of you who have worked these lists before, you know that after reporting is done, we run a system-wide revoke kind of script where it takes away the award for students that no longer qualify. And so a couple of times during the year, the revoked list is really large, mostly if you have a lot of students receiving court in progress. I heavily, strongly recommend that you check your lists weekly so that you can keep up with the changes that are coming up in case, like I said, the student does something and they no longer qualify. Like if there's a PJ, since we're accepting PJs this year, There might be more movement in those lists, so you definitely want to keep an eye on it. Reject reasons. So a variety of reject reasons, and you can find them here. They will come up. So when you run the list history and you just add the awarded and not awarded and the change status, some of the students will obviously have been rejected. So there's a variety of reject reasons. A reject reason may show on a follow-up list if the student has been reviewed or validated, or we received their FAFSA, or for example, they added a community college in the middle of the week. Again, we only update lists on Mondays. And so even if something happens in the middle of the week, you won't see a change until the following week. So you definitely, again, another reason why you'd want to keep track of these lists. Just a couple of comments on these reject reasons. So for example, the application invalid, application not reviewed yet, application not submitted, they're all related to the Oregon Promise application, and it has nothing to do with the FAFSA or the ORSA. So there's some differentiation there. For example, the graduate student and the graduating student, they're also not the same. One refers to a student who said they would have a bachelor's degree by the beginning of the year or July. And then graduating student refers to the grade level the student entered on the FAFSA. So again, there might be two separate reject codes, and you want to double check that basically one or the other, and then guide the student properly if they come to you. What else? Pell estimate not available may mean that reject FAFSA. We did receive some FAFSAs with a blank SAI. And so that would be one of the reasons why the Pell estimate is not available. It may come hand in hand with a rejected FAFSA reject code, because if the FAFSA is rejected, there's no way that our system can estimate the Pell or estimate an Oregon Promise award. And so most of the time they kind of come hand in hand. State of residency, it would be a state of residency that would show other than Oregon. And obviously we would want to make sure that the student is an Oregon resident, otherwise they can't qualify. One note on this, you may have seen in the last couple of weeks lists that some students are showing either a residency time minimum not met or a state of residency issue for like the fall term, but they're being awarded for winter and spring. If they're not eligible as they apply during the time that they apply and meet the 12 months or the 6 months for the parent residency status, the system shouldn't be awarding them at all. And so if it looks funky that way, please contact me. They will be corrected. There's already an IT ticket pending for that to be corrected. And the residency time minimum not met refers to the time period for Oregon residency. So again, if the student put on their FAFSA that they became a resident a couple of months ago, or that the parents still don't live here, or they haven't been a resident for 6 months minimum, they will be rejected and will need to correct the application. Most of the time we kind of assume that it is incorrect because they've shown us that they graduated from high school here. And so we assume that they are Oregon residents, but we always like to confirm. Missing required term refers to a missed term at your college. But you need to remember that sometimes a student will attend one college for fall and then they will transfer to your college. Sometimes they will have added your college from the time that they applied originally when they submitted their FAFSA. Sometimes they change their minds and add the college later, which means that you may never see that fall eligibility because the student didn't have your college information until later on into the process. Rejected ORSAs, code 782, mostly due to provisional independent status. There is no SAI. We are contacting the students to make sure that that information is correct. There's been a lot of confusion with the ORSA applications and how to answer the residency questions, as well as the like homelessness questions or any of the special circumstance questions. And so we're having a lot of students having to go back and correct that. And I should have told you guys, obviously, if you have questions, you can put them on the chat and then we can address them really quickly later. So some information on Oregon Promise reporting specs. I mentioned at the beginning that you can click on the Oregon Promise disbursement reporting link and it will basically tell you which reporting time frame is open. And obviously everything now is closed because there's nothing happening. We're reconciled for 23-24. This will open again sometime in November when we start collecting fall reporting, basically. One thing to note, which you obviously have already noticed if you are working through your lists, is a big change from previous years. We're mimicking the Pell intensity since Oregon Promise is last dollar to Pell. And so you will see 7 different award amounts for students moving forward. So there's a full-time, so from anywhere from 12 plus to 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, and 6 credits. Each enrollment level will have its own amount. More information on Oregon Promise reporting will be available closer to the reporting time. And the only reason I say this is because our IT department is still working on programming the system to not only recognize all of these award amounts. So I can't see it myself yet. I have to log into these list histories as well to see it. It doesn't show on my screen. And we don't know yet how reporting will work. If you're going to end up having to say the exact amount of credits or if that's going to be removed, I don't have that information yet, but we will as time comes along and we have to have it ready. But I did mention that the specs are already available in the portal, so you definitely want to have your IT department look at that. Disbursement reporting for 24-25, like I mentioned, will not be posted in the partner portal until OPG disbursement reporting system opens. As we know, it's usually open for 2 to 2.5 weeks. And then we will give you more information. There will definitely be another new training, probably beginning to mid of November, in order to just get through all of this. Once reporting is closed for the term, all late disbursements must be requested and approved by OSAC in advance. And so usually around right after Thanksgiving break is when we will give you the date, but that's when we need to hear from you first. Before you go ahead and pay the student. So we definitely want to make sure that we're pretty tight on budget this year, hence the SAI limit. So we definitely want to make sure that we are dispersing students at the proper time, so that we don't have to say no later on because we basically wouldn't have enough funds. Some of the situations that we consider for these late requests are usually students were notified about verification or other outstanding requirements, but kind of waited that 120 days. And so we want to make sure that the student is complying with your requests before we approve the late disbursements. Obviously, if there's any institution errors or any SSN issues, extenuating circumstances, we would obviously take those into consideration. So again, just check with us, give us as much information as you can so that we can make a determination without having to go back and forth with you too much. You want to remember to report any summer credits during the fall reporting period. So please make sure that you don't forget to do that so that students can be accounted for all the credits that they take. So for renewal students, please report all summer credits in summer 24-25. So you can use the term as summer term, or you can use pre-college. Now, if you have already in the past reported pre-college credits, I can only have one pre-college entry, which means that if you are reporting new numbers, it will override what you've already reported. So if you could use summer as true summer credits, that would be better for us. For new students, you can either do pre-college or summer because there isn't anything reported for the student at that point. If a student hits the 90 credit limit during the summer, do not disperse fall term, even if they're authorized in our system, because remember, we won't have that data until you report. So the student will look like they're eligible for aid. If they hit the 90 during summer, they will look like they're eligible for fall, winter, and spring because the system will not know. The system will not have this information until you report fall. So your system has to have some way of detecting how close the student is to those 90 credits so that you don't disperse fall. Because once you report the summer credits, the student will be revoked for fall. So that's a really important one that you might want to think about. A couple of things that are coming up a lot, and it's not new, but it's something that, oh, actually, I want to talk about something before that, sorry. For check award, authorized awards page, to tell if they are a spring or winter cohort. So again, remember that some students graduate later, and so they are a winter cohort or a spring cohort, which means that once you pull up the student, it's only going to show winter and spring. It's not a mistake. It basically just says this student is not eligible for fall. Even if they start attending, they can only start receiving Oregon Promise either in the winter or in the spring terms. Okay. And some of the time you will see like this little picture down here is that if there is a missed required term status for fall, that corresponds to your college only. This to me indicates that the student was definitely paid somewhere else or received a waiver somewhere else, as in like another community college. And now they are eligible to receive winter and spring from your college. If the student missed the required term altogether and never attended anywhere, these would be zeroed out. There would not be a winter or spring award listed. Okay. So this can get a little tricky. So again, just go through your lists and just make sure that you observe all of these things. You want to make sure to email me in case it looks weird and you're not 100% sure. I'd rather you double check with me than make an assumption and pay the student incorrectly or not pay the student when they should have been paid. If you export the list into Excel, you can sort by cohort term, which actually really is helpful to identify if a full year was authorized and they are only in your college for winter and spring, or if they are a winter or spring cohort only. Obviously this is an old screenshot. There are no winter cohort students authorized for 24-25 because we haven't opened the application yet, nor have we started reviewing them. So you won't see a winter cohort student until about mid-fall when we start the process. A little oddity that has come up a few times, but it's correct. And so I just wanted to mention it. Sometimes, very rarely, you will see that a student has a higher amount if they are less than full-time, specifically for the 11 credit authorization amount. And usually that happens when the SAI is high enough that the student is either eligible for a minimum Pell or no Pell. So this affects students with a small partial Pell amount and eligibility, so the Oregon Opportunity Grant. The 3/4 amount is increased to fill in the gap due to a minimum Oregon Opportunity Grant and a small Pell Grant. This will apply to students who become ineligible for a Pell Grant if not attending full-time. So if we refer to the old Pell chart, we know that you hit that EFC amount where all of a sudden, if the student is not attending full-time status, then they just lose their Pell eligibility. And so the Oregon Promise kicks in to pick up for that difference that the Pell doesn't. And the same thing happens for students, for example, that are not Pell eligible, but maybe Opportunity Grant eligible, like the second example where the SAI is just below the OOG max of 8,000, and the student is eligible for a larger Oregon Promise amount at 11 credits, because remember the Opportunity Grant kicked in at a minimum here and is making up the difference that the Pell Grant can't do because the student's just not eligible for the Pell. So if I have not confused you enough with this, I'll be happy enough. But basically, remember that all Oregon Promise grant awards are last dollar to Pell and opportunity grant. And so if a student doesn't have one or both of those, their OPG award is always going to be higher than the minimum. Okay, now that I've talked at you,